incredible discovery.
Jumanji. You wanna play?
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Puffin Movie Review. I am feeling absolutely fantastic right now, just completely coasting on a beautiful, relaxed vibe. If you are chilling in the circle with us today, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and slap a like on the video. We are on a massive push to hit our 1,000 subscriber milestone, and having you pull up a chair in the community means everything to me.
Incredible discovery.
Today we are sparking up and diving into the incredible reality-bending behind-the-scenes history of the 1995 masterpiece Jumanji. This movie is an absolute trip, because it marks the literal turning point where Hollywood figured out how to make digital animals actually look real. Grab your papers, pack something green, and let's break down how this board game chaos first got brought to life. To trace the roots of this madness, we have to look at how the original book by Chris Van Allsburg actually got optioned. Producer Peter Guber was visiting Boston and invited Van Allsburg over from Providence to strike a deal. Van Allsburg rolled up his sleeves and wrote one of the early screenplay drafts, trying to inject the story with a heavy dose of mystery and surrealism. But here's the wild part. The studio was actually right on the edge of completely abandoning the entire project. The only reason it survived is because Van Allsburg put together a specific film treatment that added a ton of fresh story material not found in the original children's book, which earned him a well-deserved story credit and saved the movie from getting scrapped. Once the script was alive, TriStar Pictures agreed to finance the film, but they had one massive non-negotiable condition: Robin Williams had to be the star. When Robin read the first script they handed him, he flat out turned it down. It took an extensive top-to-bottom rewrite by director Joe Johnston and a team of screenwriters before Robin finally saw the vision and signed on. Johnston was actually terrified at first because of Robin's legendary reputation for wild, non-stop improvisation. The director worried he wouldn't stick to the script. But Robin completely understood it was a tightly structured narrative. He shot every scene exactly as written, and then they would shoot duplicate takes where he and Bonnie Hunt were allowed to completely cut loose and improvise.
We started playing a little game.
Oh, God, sir! I spent over $2,000 in therapy.
Principal photography officially kicked off on November 14, 1994, and wrapped in April 1995. They traveled all over New England to find their locations, using Keene, New Hampshire to represent the fictional town of Brantford, and a spot called the Old Woolen Mill in North Berwick, Maine, to stand in for the Paris Shoe Factory. But a massive chunk of the magic happened up in Vancouver, British Columbia. The crew built a giant full-scale mock-up of the iconic Parish House, and they took over local spots like the Delta Fair Mall to shoot the chaotic supermarket sequence where the animals completely wrecked the store. When it came to the creatures, the production used a mind-blowing mix of old-school puppetry and physical animatronics built by Amalgamated Dynamics, combined with cutting-edge digital effects handled by Industrial Light and Magic. Ilm literally had to invent 2 brand-new software programs just to make this movie possible. He sculpted a program that allowed digital artists to create highly realistic facial expressions on computer-generated animals. The Hair Simulator, a revolutionary breakthrough that, for the first time in cinema history, created realistic digital fur for the monkeys and the lion. And spare a thought for young actor Bradley Pierce, who played Peter. Every single day for 2.5 months, he had to sit in a makeup chair for 3.5 hours just to have prosthetic monkey makeup applied to his face for his transformation scenes. The production wrapped up with a lot of love poured into the final frames. Tragically, visual effects supervisor Stephen L. Price passed away before the movie hit theaters, and the filmmakers dedicated the entire movie to his memory. Jumanji finally had its grand premiere on December 10, 1995, in Culver City, California, right where TriStar's parent company, Sony Pictures Entertainment, was based, before officially unleashing the stampede into theaters nationwide on December 15th. Thinking about sitting in a makeup chair for 3.5 hours a day just to turn into a monkey sounds like a complete psychological test. The dedication on that set was on an entirely different level.
Action! Stampede.
Alright, let's step away from the chaotic New England sets and look at what happened when this stampede actually hit the public, because the financial success, the critical roasts, and the home video legacy of this movie are a complete ride. If you are sitting here in the circle with me, completely drifting on this wave, this is where the studio's massive gamble on digital fur and animatronics completely pays off. Let's break down the box office numbers, the classic critical battles, and how the movie conquered the living room. When Jumanji finally dropped in theaters, it didn't just walk in, it absolutely smashed its way to the top. It opened at number 1 at the box office, completely overtaking Disney's Toy Story by hauling in roughly $11 million in its very first weekend. By the time the theatrical stampede finally slowed down, the movie had collected an impressive $101 million in the United States and Canada, plus another $162 million internationally. That brought its grand worldwide total to a massive $263 million. Regular audiences were completely thrilled, handing the movie a very solid and average grade on CinemaScore, and the hype didn't stop at the theater doors. When Columbia TriStar Home Video unleashed the film on VHS on May 14, 1996, it completely conquered the home video market, wrapping up the year as the 7th best-selling video in the entire United States. The studio kept the gravy train rolling for decades, dropping a collector's series edition DVD in 2000, a wild special edition bundle in the UK that literally came packed with the actual physical Jumanji board game, and a Blu-ray debut in 2011. They even dropped a 20th anniversary edition in 2015, followed by a gorgeous, fully restored 4K UHD release on December 5, 2017, timed perfectly to hype everyone up for the premiere of the sequel, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. While audiences were throwing their money at the screen, the critical elite were locked in a massive, beautifully petty war over whether the movie actually had a soul. The film holds a mixed 56% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a weighted average score of 41 out of 100 on Metacritic, with most reviewers complaining that the technical wizardry completely smothered the storytelling. The reviews were an absolute mixed bag of high praise and brutal roasts. The praise Peter Bradshaw over at The Guardian was totally hooked, giving it 4 out of 5 stars and praising Robin Williams for being completely exuberant but controlled as elephants trampled the town. Even the book's original author, Chris Van Allsburg, gave it his official stamp of approval. He admitted the script wasn't quite as peculiar as his original vision, but he declared that the film was beautifully faithful in reproducing the pure, unadulterated chaos level of having jungle animals wrecking a house. The Mixed Vibes Kim Newman from Empire magazine gave it a casual 3 out of 5 stars, calling it rampant fun while you're sitting through it, but warning that it was essentially a half-term crowd pleaser that viewers would completely forget by the summer. The brutal roast but nobody went to war with this movie, quite like the legend Roger Ebert, who slapped it with a dismal 1.5 stars out of 4. Ebert openly questioned why the movie was rated PG instead of PG-13, fiercely arguing that the intense imagery would absolutely traumatize little kids. The Roger Ebert Takedown. Ebert claimed the movie was about as appropriate for smaller children as, say, Jaws. He specifically complained that Peter's monkey transformation made the kid look like a terrifying wolfman with a hairy snout and wicked jaws. He concluded that watching the movie was like playing a brutal video game where you just survive level after level, joking that the ultimate level for young viewers would be simply being able to sit all the way through to the credits without crying. Leonard Clady over at Variety agreed with Ebert's anxiety, praising the narrative and the jaw-dropping visuals but warning parents everywhere that the film was far too frightening for younger audiences. Man, comparing a family board game movie to Jaws because a kid grew a little digital monkey fur is peak 90s critic energy. Ebert was completely stressed out by those monkeys, and honestly, that just makes me appreciate the chaos even more. Alright, let's look at the long game evolution of this franchise, because the way a 90s board game transformed into a modern multi-billion-dollar video game empire is an absolute trip. If you are sitting here in the circle with us, completely coasting on this elevated wave, watching how the studio tried to capture lightning in a bottle twice is a wild piece of Hollywood history. Let's break down the cancelled 2000 sequel, the massive 2017 reboot shift, and how the franchise finally paid respect to the GOAT, Robin Williams. Back in the late 1990s, Sony Pictures Entertainment was riding incredibly high on the massive success of the original film and wanted a direct sequel fast. They actually went out and hired Ken Ralston, the legendary visual effects supervisor who meticulously mapped out the digital animals on the first movie, to step up into the director's chair. The studio was moving at absolute warp speed, locking in a prime theatrical release date for Christmas of 2000, but the production ran into a massive wall. Ralston ultimately decided to step down from the project, and without his visual effects guidance, the entire sequel was completely cancelled and buried in the studio vaults for over a decade. The project finally emerged from its long slumber in the 2010s. Doug Belgrad, the president of Columbia Pictures, started teasing the public in July 2012 that a new Jumanji project was a real possibility. 3 years later, in August, the studio officially confirmed the project was alive, locking in Jake Kasdan to direct and bringing in the ultimate box office heavyweight Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to anchor the cast. When Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle finally hit theaters on December 20, 2017, it completely flipped the script on the entire lore. The filmmakers realized that modern kids wouldn't realistically be captivated by a dusty old board game in an attic, so they had the game literally mutate itself into a retro 1990s video game console. The narrative structure completely shifted too. Instead of bringing the jungle hazards out into a peaceful New England town, the game sucked 4 high school teenagers directly into the television screen. They found themselves completely trapped inside the dangerous dimension of Jumanji, forced to inhabit the bodies of specialized video game avatars with specific strengths and weaknesses. The only way to escape the digital world alive was to work together and completely finish the game's final level. To give the franchise a completely fresh start, the movie featured a whole new set of characters, with absolutely none of the original cast members from the 1995 film returning to reprise their roles. But Jake Kasdan made sure the movie didn't completely disconnect from its roots. The script features a beautiful, incredibly touching tribute to Robin Williams' iconic character, Alan Parrish, revealing that Alan had actually built the hidden jungle treehouse sanctuary that the new avatars used to survive. Man, thinking about how close we came to a Y2K Jumanji sequel, directed by the visual effects guy, is wild. But honestly, waiting it out and getting the video game upgrade with a treehouse tribute to Robin Williams was a beautiful way to keep the magic alive.
Shooting Jumanji inspired the filmmakers to reach for the magic that lies in the uncharted territory called imagination.
Alright, let's wrap this entire cosmic board game saga up by looking at the absolute explosion of the expanded universe, the hidden sequels, the weird 90s cartoons, and the massive real-world theme parks that let you experience the Stampede in person. If you are sitting here in the circle with us, completely riding this elevated wave, seeing how far this board game stretched across pop culture is a beautiful trip. Let's break down the 2019 sequel, the classic cartoon retcons, and the massive physical roller coasters built in honor of the game. The cinematic universe kept expanding with Jumanji: The Next Level, which dropped on December 13, 2019. The filmmakers threw a massive Easter egg in at the very end, bringing back Baby Newworth to reprise her original role as Nora Shepherd in a brilliant cameo clip. But if you grew up in the late 90s, you probably remember the animated television series that ran between 1996 and 1999. Now, while the cartoon borrowed heavily from the look of the film, meticulously modeling Alan's house, and the board game exactly like the silver screen version, the writers completely retconned the storyline out in the animated world. Every single turn gives the players a cryptic game clue before sucking them directly into the jungle, and they can't leave until they solve it. Alan is permanently stuck in Jumanji because he never actually saw his original clue. Judy and Peter spend the entire series trying to help him find a way out, which serves as their main motivation. Meanwhile, Sarah is completely absent from the show, and Alan ends up having a romantic relationship with Aunt Nora instead, which actually gives a much clearer explanation as to why he acts as Judy and Peter's surrogate uncle. Naturally, the franchise spawned a massive wave of physical games and digital spin-offs. Milton Bradley dropped the original physical board game back in 1995, and Cardinal Games gave it a massive, beautifully colorized facelift in 2017 with updated riddle messages on the danger cards. The redesign was a massive hit, earning game designer Rachel Lowe a British Game of the Year award. On the digital side, things got beautifully weird. The 1996 PC pack, a North American exclusive, called Jumanji: A Jungle Adventure Game pack, dropped from Microsoft Windows. Developed by Studio Interactive, it featured 5 different action arcade minigames based on movie scenes. Bizarrely, it didn't feature the actual board game mechanics at all. Instead, jungle animals gave you instructions, and a creepy Jumanji spirit guided you through a hidden treasure maze. The PlayStation 2 party game Europe got an exclusive physical party video game based on the film back in 2006. The anime Pachinko Cross in 2007, a company called Fuji Shoji released a literal Japanese pachinko game that mixed real clips from the movie with 3D rendered CGI anime versions of the characters. For the hardcore collectors, the Noble Collection even went out and built a stunning collector's replica of the original wooden board game, beautifully blending elements from both the classic 90s film and the modern video game versions. But the ultimate evolution of the franchise happened when they brought the jungle into the real physical world. In 2022, a massive Jumanji-themed dark ride opened at Gardaland in Italy, featuring a colossal, terrifying animatronic figure roaring at riders. And in May of 2023, Chessington World of Adventures over in the UK unveiled a jaw-dropping themed land called the World of Jumanji. The area features a thick, lush jungle atmosphere, wild rides like the Ostrich Stampede and Mamba Strike, and a massive main attraction called Mandrill Mayhem, a shuttle-wing coaster that literally weaves in and out of a giant rock mountain shaped like a roaring tiger's head. Through it all, the original masterpiece continues to hold its legendary status. Way back in 2005, Channel 4 listed Jumanji as the 48th greatest family film of all time, sitting right alongside classics like Disney's Dumbo and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. And in a beautiful full-circle moment in 2011, the late great Robin Williams returned to the project one last time, recording a gorgeous audiobook narration for the 30th anniversary edition of Chris Van Allsburg's original book. It is absolutely wild to look back at the massive journey of the Jumanji franchise, to think it started as a beautiful, slightly surreal children's book, survived a brutal critical thrashing in the 90s, and somehow mutated into a multi-billion-dollar video game empire and real-world roller coaster destination. It's just a legendary piece of pop culture history. And knowing that Robin Williams came back in 2011 to record that final audiobook before he passed, that is just the most beautiful, perfect full-circle moment you could ask for. But I want to know what the circle thinks about this one. Do you prefer the old-school, terrifying board game chaos of the 1995 original, or are you all about the high-octane Avatar video game world of the new sequels? And did any of you actually watch that weird animated series back in the day? Drop your highest thoughts down in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going. If you had a great time rolling up, relaxing, and diving into some deep nostalgic history with me today, please do me a massive favor and hit that like button. And if you haven't joined the crew yet, go ahead and hit subscribe. We are pushing incredibly hard to reach that 1,000 subscriber milestone, and having you pull up a chair in the circle helps the channel grow more than you know. Thank you so much for hanging out, sparking something good, and breaking down the behind-the-scenes lore with me today. Stay safe, keep it completely chill, and I will catch you right here for the next breakdown.